I'd love to take credit for this statement, but as he's talking, he said, everybody tells you, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it. He goes, brothers and sisters, I want to tell you to face it. And Dom, you can imagine, I'm like, whoa, that's a good one. Let me write that one down. I'm gonna, repurpose that. I'll give credit, but I'm gonna repurpose it. And so, it always sticks out for that reason. I thought about that. And I thought about, well, what's the difference between the two? And I think when you're faking it, there's some inauthenticity, right? And there's that imposter syndrome that now you're navigating through, and there's a learning that stops because you feel as though you have to be smart. And I always think about, my career started out with sales. And what do they tell you? Fake it till you make it. You get into leadership. What do they tell you? Fake it till you can make it.
You are now listening to the highlight reel builder for authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, best-selling author, and Maxwell Leadership Certified Trainer, DomBrightmon. And you're going to be getting some tips and techniques to advance yourself coming up next. Today's episode is sponsored by both books, Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself, and the follow-up bestseller, Stay the Course, The Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. Head over to Amazon.com, pick up both books. They are available in a trifecta of paperback, audio, and ebook. Cop all 3 of both and be on the lookout for another book from yours truly to help podcasters succeed. Now let's get on with today's episode. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as GMP, the great, glorious, and glamorous is the Going North podcast. And we got another super special, awesome human for you today. That's right, indeed. Courtesy of probably one of my favorite sites ever, podmatch.com, baby. That's right, indeed. Where podcast guests get to connect with podcast hosts. And if they're cool, they're freaking in. And today's guest is definitely in, baby, because he got a fellow child of the king, baby. That's right, indeed. A man who's also prolific, more than one book, y'all. That's right, Dave. Man's got his words and writings out there for you to devour. That is too sweet to be sour. And he's a fellow speaker as well as a facilitator, and is a battle-tested executive coach, y'all. So that means my man has been in the trenches with all sorts of companies, taking him from zero all the way to becoming Fortune 500 companies. So let's give it up for the good doctor himself, the one and only Jay Williams. How you doing today, Jay?
Oh, wow. Let me tell you, you should handle my PR. Wow, I think you could have a new job there. I love it. I can't wait to hear me based on that introduction. Wow. Wow. I gotta live up to it now.
Oh man, don't worry. You're doing it, man. You're doing it, man. You got books out there. My man's been coaching for decades. It's probably been almost close to 30 years now, right?
Yeah, don't tell the listeners my age. The thing is, you want to stay hip, you want to stay relevant, right? Regardless of the group. So yes, it's been almost 30 years. Time flies. Time flies.
I can see that again. So my goodness, man. So did at the age of 13, did you see yourself becoming like a big time executive coach, helping out all these companies, or was it something totally different that led you to where you are today?
It's funny you say that, right? Because you think back when you're a kid and, maybe for Halloween, you picked a scary character. Maybe you picked who you wanted to be, right? You see kids dress up as doctors, lawyers, president of the United States. But, as a kid growing up in LA, executive coach, nobody heard of that, right? That wasn't a thing. And so I can't tell you that I grew up wanting to do it, but here's kind of where it happened for me. So in my career, I kind of moved up through the ranks and got into executive position. And I think maybe for some of the people listening, there's something you aspire to, you want, and then when you get there, you go, wow, it's not, I finally got it. It's not what I want, right? And so kind of what I realized is that I didn't like being a leader of people, which sounds very odd, and people thinking, why are you on the show? Wait a second. Are you talking us out of being leaders? That's the goal of today's show, Dom. I'm going to talk people out of leadership. But when I work with people now, I will tell you a lot of CEOs are going, Jay, I'm just burnt out, man. I don't want to lead my people. And actually, they ask me, can you fix my people for me? Don't help me fix people. Can you fix them? So I can relate to it because I got to this point in my career where I didn't enjoy the role I was in, but I thought, what do I love about it? And Dom, I love connecting with people. I loved asking questions and listening, and I loved developing them and maximizing their potential. What I didn't so much enjoy was being accountable for their performance because there are some things that were outside of my control. And so to answer your question, I just took the pieces I enjoyed, and I enjoyed speaking to it. I enjoyed training. I enjoyed coaching people, and I took those aspects of the work that I do, and I left the parts I didn't like. I mean, it'd be great in life if you could do that, right? You can't always do it. And so probably going back, I guess it'd be almost at the 16-year mark, left that and said, hey, I'm going to start working with organizations. And for anyone listening, I can't tell you, it was intended. You know what happened, Dom? Someone said, hey, we heard you speak. Can you come speak for us? And I'm like, sure, and they go, well, how much do you charge? And in my head, I'm thinking, you'll pay me to do this? So I can't tell you it was a well planned out strategy as much as by accident. So I think if people are listening, got into it, for majority of people, it probably happened that way. And you go, wow, you'll pay me to talk about something that I'm passionate about, that I love doing. So that was a long-winded answer, but that's how this all came about.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about, indeed. And it's a beautiful feeling when folks actually ask you like, hey, so how much is your fee? It's like, oh shoot, fee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do this for free, but I love me some fees
Uh,
that they're paying me.
yeah. I think it's Andre 3000, Greyhound don't float on water, So listen, and I think for any of the listeners and like yourself, if you could get paid to do something you love doing, that's the ultimate gig in life.
Heck yeah, that UG baby, that ultimate gig right there, indeed. So my goodness, man. So with all that wonderful journeying and all that wonderful side questing that led you to where you are today, man, like what'd you think is probably your biggest setback that actually has given you your biggest success thus far?
I, I would say it's my insecurity, which sounds kind of odd, right? Because you get on stage and you work with CEOs, and I think it's humanity's scalable. You know what I mean? What you and I may encounter, the executive encounters, the athlete encounters. And so, for me, I think the insecurity, there's like, hey, am I good enough? Should I be the guy? Why would they come to me? And I think there's a certain humility that's accompanied that. And so the insecurity doesn't work against me. I think it brings about this humility that maybe I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and it encourages me to listen and to ask questions to better understand. And so, stylistically, Dom, what I would tell you is I am more apt to ask a question than make a statement. And so, it served me well, whether it's mediation or conflict resolution, or even in the training capacity in communication, in any format of interaction, is to lead with the question. And so, part of it's insecurity: am I smart enough? Am I good enough? And the other part is this humility that comes along with it. So I think for anybody who's maybe feeling a level of insecurity, it could be from where you come from, it may be your education, it may be your experiences, is that I wouldn't abandon it. You just want to be able to regulate it, because I think it's something that can work for you. And at the same time, it could work against you. So I'm not sure how well I answered that question, but when I think about it, it's the thing that keeps me in the zone in the moment.
I get you. I get you. And that could, I guess, in a way, with insecurity, could sometimes even lead to imposter syndrome. It's like, oh man, am I really built for this? It's like, oh no, even though I got all these accomplishments, I made a mistake. Look at social media. No, everybody's so perfect and glamorous. Like they use the bathroom and they release gold. They don't release the other stuff.
It's you talk about social media. So and listen, for anybody who's listening, I'm not downplaying it. I'm just having a real with you about the conversation. Is I don't spend a lot of time on it. I do invest in someone, not to have a lot of money. I just realize the importance of it and I need to do it. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean I don't need to do it. However, I realize that if I'm there, some of the things that you talked about is you get this snapshot, right? So you don't know what happened before or after that picture. And these feelings of judgment, insecurity, anger, resentment, and I haven't been able to manage those, with the exception of just staying off social media, right? So I think it's important, for people that there's a lot of good that comes from social media. I think a tremendous amount of good that comes from it. And at the same time, it's about regulation, understanding when it kind of tips the scale for you, and to back off. And, you talk about this imposter syndrome. One of the chapters I wrote about in the second book, This versus That, is faking it versus facing it. And I tell the story at the risk. This is not to offend anyone. It's just to paint a picture for you. But I was in Cleveland, and I happened to be having a day where I was working on a Saturday and then working on a Monday, so I had Sunday free. So I wanted to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I wanted to go to church too. So I didn't know where to go for church, but I'm checking in the hotel, Dom, and right behind the person, it has a church. I said, "You have a church in the hotel?" They said, "Yeah, their church burned down. They use our conference and our meetings rooms." So I was like, right on. I was looking for a sign from God. There it was. So I get up early, Sunday morning, for I was going to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I go downstairs to go to church there. And I'm there a little bit early, and I'm there on time, and people are kind of strolling in, and I'm standing around as I'm talking to someone. I look, and it's an all black church. And so again, no judgment. I'm just painting the picture. It is a different experience than any other church experience I've experienced. And so it was moving. It was one of the most inspirational, motivational, at some level transformational too. But the pastor, actually, I still have the notes I keep from there. And I'd love to take credit for this statement, but as he's talking, he said, everybody tells you, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it. He goes, brothers and sisters, I want to tell you to face it. And Dom, you can imagine, I'm like, whoa, that's a good one. Let me write that one down. I'm gonna, repurpose that. I'll give credit, but I'm gonna repurpose it. And so, it always sticks out for that reason. I thought about that. And I thought about, well, what's the difference between the two? And I think when you're faking it, there's some inauthenticity, right? And there's that imposter syndrome that now you're navigating through, and there's a learning that stops because you feel as though you have to be smart. And I always think about, my career started out with sales. And what do they tell you? Fake it till you make it. You get into leadership. What do they tell you? Fake it till you can make it. And I think facing it shows some authenticity. I think it shows vulnerability. And I think your people will rally behind you if you'll face it. You go, hey, I'm new to this. I haven't encountered this before. I'm going to need your help on this. If it's not going directly where you should, give me some of that feedback. And so when you say, fake it, I think for leaders, and whether, listen, you're leading in your small group, or you're leading at work, or you're leading in your community, you're leading in your home, that's important to face things, because I think when you do, again, there's this vulnerability that I told you about, there's this insecurity, but you get comfortable with it. And I think the people around you get comfortable. And now you have this open, honest, on-time communication in your culture. So probably a little bit more of a response than you wanted, but it's, I want to give credit to that pastor at that hotel in Cleveland. I think it's called the Living Church, but, it really sparked my thinking. It really validated that people can be insecure and maybe not have confidence and still be effective if you'll face it versus faking it.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's powerful right there, indeed. That's right. Face instead of faking it. That's right, indeed. Because that old faking thing has led to a lot of folks who got a little they were staying a little too long in the faking it phase before they ever actually made
Yeah, so we'll be careful on examples, but I think we've all had a global example of people over the last few years that did fake it. And they didn't fool anyone, by the way. Maybe themselves, but they didn't fool
it.
anybody else.
It's kind of funny and sad how that works. It's like, oh yeah, we got a bull, baby, hook, line, and sinker, and it's like, oh no, I'm the sucker. Darn.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Just you. It's a party of one.
That's right, indeed. So, my goodness, man, what led you to become a writer, my man, and join the business of immortality? Because if I'm not mistaken, you got, I guess, 3 books out. I think 2 your own, and one is a co-written book, or you wrote the forward for another one.
Well, yeah, so there's two that I've written. There's one floating around my head, and some people have used some endorsements. So there's a hybrid of a third, but I can't take full credit for it. The truth is that this I was in New Orleans and someone introduced me to a guy, and this guy was, I think he spoke for an hour generally. And at the time, this is probably about 11 years ago, he'd make $15,000 speaking for an hour. So listen, Tom, I'm not above getting advice, especially if it's free there. So someone introduced us. I said, hey, could we grab lunch? And we did. And they said, if you're going to give me one piece of advice, what would it be? He said, Jay, here's what I tell you. You could be 10 times the speaker I am, but if I have author after my name, 10 times out of 10, I'm going to get booked over you. I said, point taken, my friend. So he said, I just started writing blogs, Jay. He said, at some point, I had like 200 pages. And he said, I got turned down. He said, too many times to count. He said, I mean, it's well over 100 times of submitting and getting turned down. But he said, the thing is it's the author piece of it. And so, Dom, that's really how it came about. There are definitely some thoughts in my head, but I was looking to, certainly credentialize myself and to differentiate myself. And so that's what really started it. And it was a long process. It's humbling in the sense that like what I can do with you here comes very easily. Writing's a completely different skill set. And I realized like I almost sound like a different person. So that's how it came about. And I would tell you that, I got help on it. I hired an editor and there's going back and forth. So what people experience now, I think the editor did a great job of people going, wow, it really sounds like you. But I got a little help to sound like myself. Let's put it that way. But the book is it's been able to credentialize, I think. I think we all fall into that, that maybe this person's a subject matter expert in some way. Uh, and then the other purpose it was to serve was to, I'm a faith-based guy, and I just, everybody prays differently, but I just said, hey, God, please don't ask me to do something I'm not good at. Please just take one of my existing skills and leverage that one, because I talk about that in leadership. So, the book was really a vehicle that, I could give back. So I share that with you because 100% of the profits always have and always will go towards human trafficking, helping it. Well, let me rephrase that, Dom. Not helping it. It's doing
Oh,
fine. So stopping it. Sorry, Dom. Let me just clarify that. Stopping it. So it's been a great vehicle for that. And, you and I live off of that 95 corridor, about 3 hours apart, but where we're based in the country in the Northeast there, the corridors just make it very easy to do. So it was something that kind of hit home in a way that I could use a gift that was given to me to give back. So it was a combination of those two things that led to it.
so I'm talking about indeed. So I'm talking about indeed. So my goodness, and the human trafficking thing, that's freaking horrible. And it's actually sad that that's still going on today, man. So what led you to, I guess, donating your proceeds to help stop that? Like, is there a reason behind that? Did you just flip a coin or something? It's like, all right, which one of these is probably in the top five worst of all of the human nonsense in the world?
That'd be a tough list to narrow down these days, my friend, to five,
Yeah.
right? Where it came about was I was at church and one Sunday, and they had somebody just come up and to kind of speak for a few minutes, and they're talking about human trafficking. And if you guys can relate to it, you hear these stories. Not that they're any less important. You just don't think it's going on where you're at, right? Like it's a third world problem. It's happening somewhere else. And again, for listeners, it doesn't minimize it for me. It's just that, yeah, it is a problem, but it's happening somewhere else. And what can I do about it? And so as the speaker wrapped up, he said, yeah, for those of you wondering where this is happening, it's right here where we're at, Bucks County. Like, wait, I live here. I didn't see that. What's yeah. So I was listening at one point. Someone was talking about intentional giving and planned giving. Some people give spontaneously or emotionally. And by the way, not judging either one. But what about being intentional in your giving? So you set aside money ahead of time, and it's maybe auto deposit or something like that. So that was one tip I took. And then the other was, you ever feel guilty, like you get something for breast cancer awareness, right? You get something for leukemia, and should I give? And this just kind of helps you if you can predetermine where you're going to give, that you have that concentrated effort, and if it resonates with you. So being right in the county that I lived in, and a chance to get involved physically and not only financially in helping, that's really what drove me to that cause. And the work that I do, it's about human condition. I mean, I work on communication and collaboration, and this human trafficking is a human condition. And so it just kind of it worked well together. The industries that I work in have a tendency to have a heavy population of women leaders. And so, unfortunately, human trafficking targets women. There are men, boys involved, but it targets women as well. And so, Dom, that's where it is. It just kind of checks some boxes that go, yeah, it's women, it's a human condition, right? It's something local. And that's the story behind it. Good question. I never pieced together all that.
Yeah, man, definitely. Because it's like, hey, there's usually a story or a motive behind charitable giving of like, hey, just usually helping this area that needs helping because of, hey, sometimes folks may have had a sad part in their personal life where it's like, crap, I don't want this to happen to anybody else. Like, let me try and fix this somehow at least.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I've been blessed in the sense that I think we've all experienced trauma, and one may not be greater than the other. But yeah, I thank God that's something I didn't firsthand experience.
So, my goodness, man. So, is there a question that you wish folks would ask you more often when you're on these podcasts?
It's the number one opportunity, I think, is communication today. And when we listen, we can look at the political landscape. And again, this is for anybody who's listening, it's not a political conversation. It's a human conversation, right? And the work that I do, I always want to create a compelling human case. And for the people who don't care about humanity, Dom, a compelling business case, right? The ideal scenario is, I think, in business today, it can be both, and that people want that humanity in business. And to that point, I'm going to answer your question about what question I asked. Here's the question. Let me answer your question. Is how can I communicate more effectively? How can I connect with people? How can I get their emotional commitment? I have their mental, physical, financial commitment, but how can I get their emotional commitment or engagement? And so that's the question, the number one question I wish that they would ask. And when you, from a workplace, and listen, it could be a church, it could be a nonprofit, the wild card's the people, right? You have the product, whether it's a nonprofit, it's a church, it's a business, whatever it is, and you have your process. And then there's the people. And that's always the wild card. And I think, going forward, the people that have the ability to influence people, to tap into their discretionary performance and to maximize it, are the ones who are going to be most successful. And so people come to me and they say, well, we want to do training, right? And they just want to focus on the behavior. And I think the gift is in this communication is how can we understand that person's thinking? Because shifting their thinking is really what's going to drive their performance. It's not the behavior. Because so many times people do training and nothing happens after because they didn't shift their thinking. And so the leaders of the future will be able to, I think, influence people's thinking. They'll be able to shift people's thinking. You can't do that until you first understand the other person's thinking and their perspective. And so kind of coming full circle, or in comedy, they call it the comeback to our first comment about, the insecurity and the humility, is it drives me to ask questions. I found that that's my key in the work that I do. And it works in communications. If you'll first seek someone else's perspective first, because the most effective communicators communicate from the other person's perspective, it's the only way you could do is by asking questions. And so if people would ask me, how can I communicate more effectively? How can I be a better listener? How do I get people's emotional commitment? What questions can I ask? That's, as we drilled out, I'm sorry, I should have said this. If they ask me, Jay, what questions can I ask to better understand my people's perspective? And how can I more effectively communicate from their perspective? That's the question I wish they would ask me.
There we go, indeed. Sweet. What would be them questions?
All about them questions. All about that base. It's all about them questions. All about those questions. And let me tell you, I will, for anyone who's listening, I use this in every interaction. Somebody had asked me, they go, listen, I have a problem with my morale and, with my people, and it could be attrition. It could be them showing up on time. They say, what do I say? It's what you ask. So I'd ask people, what would need to happen so that you are on time? What would need to happen so that you do get these reports in, right? What would need to happen so that I could get a different response from you when the stress gets high? Everything that I'm going to help them with starts with crafting a question with people. So it makes your life easier. It's a lot easier to think about what should I ask versus about what should I say. What if you went to a party, right? Most people don't interact because they go, what am I going to say, right? What if you thought, what party, when I go to a party, what question can I ask? Makes life a lot easier, a lot easier.
That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right. You can ask about what's the price of tea in China. That's right.
It's a great conversation. It's a lot easier than going, oh, I know a lot about the tea in China, right? That's what people try to do. They try to share with you what they know, right? Why not find out what they know first? When I ask questions, the reason I do it is I want to know what you know, and I want to know what you think, and I want to know what you feel before I say anything. What if you did that with politics? What if you did that with race relations, right? What if you did that with people's performance? What if you did it with your kids? I just want to know what you think and what you feel first. But what do we do? No, let me tell you what I know, what I think, and what I feel. And then we can start the conversation.
Powerful policy. That's right, indeed. It's a life changer, y'all. That's right, indeed. Find out where they're coming from, indeed, as opposed to shouting out facts and shouting out what you think you know.
Happens all the time, doesn't it?
That's right. Powerful indeed. Powerful indeed. So, my goodness, man, since you're a fellow child of the King, I always invite fellow Christians to share their salvation testimony on the podcast as an evangelism opportunity, man. So, how'd you become a Christian, my man?
I don't have, I'd love to have a story where I woke up on a cell floor in Mexico one morning. It's not that story. And it's funny because, in church, you hear people's story and you go, mine's nothing like that. So, my story is not that I had a great upbringing, but the thing that was great about it was that my mom was a faith-based person. And so our exposure to, the word and to a faith and a belief system was there from day one. So again, it wasn't smooth sailing all the way through, but there's some experience and some exposure and introduction I had. And, for the better part of my life, I moved out when I was 16, and we don't need to go into details why, but, I think whatever you believe, there's a point that it becomes challenged. And it's just up to you. Nobody's going to enforce it, right? And so I moved from LA to San Diego, and my life kind of changed. Yeah, one level is certainly for the better. Imagine being 16 and having no rules and being in San Diego, right? So it's a good thing. And, I continued to go to church for about a year or so, but based on my faith, and I think this is important to things were very black or white, right? It's right or it's wrong, right? And so, just based on that belief system, I stopped going because I wasn't doing anything, that's going to send me to jail, Dom, but I wasn't doing anything that based on what I knew to be true, was right either. We'll just leave it at that. And so, I stopped going, and I didn't lose that faith, but there's a period of time. And so that became a long, long period of time. But the belief system and the connection was still there. So if that's 16, 17 or so, it's probably in my mid 30s, I re-engaged, but life had changed a lot at that point. I was married, I had 2 kids, right? And I just share this with the listening audience because maybe, it'll resonate with you. At the time I got married, even though it was important to me, I didn't throw that out. So, I married someone who's not faith-based. And, I had these values of family and loyalty and respect. And those came to, I take a hit in my value in the name of my values, So wasn't going to church on Sunday because I have value of family, and that was our together time. And I married a great person, by the way. That's not what this conversation is about, but there was just a different belief when it came to that. And so, there's some support there. It didn't include the kids and her going, So along the way, with the kids, mission trips were important to us. So we got a chance to do that. But along the way, it was a decision I had to make individually about where I was going to fall. And so that was good. It was a great testament. So I share it with people, and I don't want to take you, too deep. But for anyone who's listening, and maybe you don't have a story that was like, waking up in a prison on the floor, after a night of drinking type of thing, that I think that's okay, because I think there are a lot of people that kind of find themselves in the middle. And the thing is like, I got to make a decision for myself. And in the process, I think the relationship evolved and got redefined for me. And so the struggle's still there every day, not in the belief, because, I 100% believe. It's in, this test about the decisions that you make and what your priorities are going to be. And so, trying to understand a love in a relationship that's not human, right? I only have my own definitions, right? Like I love you, if you do this, right? It's a conditional thing. And there's somebody who'll love you unconditionally that's there, So I'll stop there. I don't know that I have a compelling story that's going to move people to tears. It's just one that's kind of been this gradual movement. And I'm not there for any of the listeners, but I think the struggle keeps me in the fight, which is good, and I'm grateful for that. So that's a long-winded answer. I'm not sure I answered your question, but I hope it resonates with somebody out there.
Don't worry, nothing wrong. A long wind. That's right, indeed. I mean, they got the Great Wall of China for a reason, right?
Yeah, to block it. It doesn't always do it, but yeah, hopefully block some of that.
That's right, indeed. It's just a testament of faith. You don't need a crazy story to really resonate with people and really have it feel real. Heck, you remember a pastor of mine. Funny enough, I feel like he may have been keep preaching to himself a bit in here. It's like, oh man, am I really supposed to be? Am I really a Christian? I ain't go through like stage 5 cancer or get into a car accident or anything like that. It's like, oh, am I really supposed to be doing this? It's like, hey, no, it's just, that's their story, and everybody has their stories, and they resonate with folks at different levels, and just gives folks that I guess in a way, comfort to realize, like, hey, like no matter where you come from, no matter what you go through, what you experience is definitely gonna be real. It's real for you. That means it's gonna be real for the other folks that will actually pay attention. Don't have to focus on, oh God, I fought in like 50 wars. I lost a limb. They put it back on, then I lost another one, but I finally made it. Like, no, it doesn't have to be all that.
I appreciate the validation, my friend, because yeah, I just say, you know, I can relate to that story. And I think there's a lot of people can. So, you know, however you get to the party, some people, you know, can just cross the street and they're there. And some people got to take a plane. Some people got to take the bus and Uber, right? But just as long as you wind up at the party.
Heck yeah, that's right indeed. That's right indeed. So, by goodness, man, a fun question for you, since my man's a fellow writer. So, if your wonderful book, this versus that, if that were a food, what would it be and why?
If that were a food, and what would it be? It's almost like a vitamin that you take that you do get some instant benefit from, but it's time released. It'll continue to give you benefits. You do need to continue to take it, though. It's not just a one and done. So I don't know that that's a food, but the idea with the book. So the first book, Leave Your Mark, was different. It was just everything that was on my mind, and you know, I put it out there. I mean, again, organized. But with the second book, human beings' attention spans have changed, and so the reason I use like a supplement or a vitamin, a healthy one, by the way, for those people who are not one that's mass marketed, but a good supplement. Um, is that people's attention spans shrunk. And when I did the research, it's about 8 seconds as a human being's attention span. So each of the chapters were this, that versus that, leadership versus management, IQ versus EQ, commitment versus compliance. And the reason is I think people want their information quickly. They need to make decisions quickly. And if you're a leader, you don't always have the time. Like it's not like it's a 90-minute movie and you can kind of evolve through the, you know, the plot. You need to make quick decisions. And so with the book, that was the idea, is that this would be a conversation piece, or it would be a guide for you, but give it to you quickly. You don't have to read the whole book. You can read 4 pages and get it. And so when you say a food, it's a food that'll give you something instantly, but it'll leave you with some sustainable value that's there. And so when you look at this book, it's 24 chapters of this versus that. And it's written in a way that I can continue to add to the book as I come up with things. Like I'm talking about satisfaction versus loyalty. I'm talking about hoping versus wishing and the difference between those two. And so I'd say the book is a healthy, organic, natural supplement that you take that has immediate and reoccurring benefits. You got to keep to it, though. So in the book, the first chapter is trust, and the last chapter, 24, is values. And I bookend it because not the order of importance, but the reality is if you don't have clarity on what trust is and how to garnish it and how to keep it and how to recoup it and how you can lose it, and you don't understand your values, everything between the pages is irrelevant. Those are the two important foundational pieces. And so again, you go back to supplements or, you know, the vitamins, is that they're foundational pieces, and you'll add other pieces to it, but this will always be foundational. I wish I had said something like an avocado or ice cream or something. I don't know. Buffalo chicken dip. I'm going to be prepared next time that comes up.
That's right. Sounds like the book is a sandwich. That's what it is.
Yes, it's a good sandwich though. It's a healthy sandwich. Yes, no carbs. Don't worry, gluten free, all that.
Yeah. Hey, for those who love the gluten, let's keep all the gluten. Put it all in there. That's right.
If you can tolerate it, it's there for you. No judgment. No judgment. No judgment.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But hey, you're it's all right though. It's like, hey, gotta know your values and definitely gotta have that trust in mind too. Because hey, that trust is huge, and a lot of folks They've been betrayed in many ways.
Yeah, I want to respect your time. I would say for anyone, just as a teaser with the trust is that when I was doing the research, there's a woman, Amy Cuddy, she's a social psychologist. She wrote a book called Presence. And in her book, when she's doing the research, she found that human beings intuitively, and this is globally, seek out two things in every interaction. And one is, can I trust that person? And two, will they respect me? And so if we just stick with trust for the point of our conversation, it is the currency in which we operate off of in the world. And I think globally, there's certain countries that we don't trust each other. I think the trust, they even measure it for the United States over the last 6 years, has dropped to almost an all-time low. And so there's a speed that comes with trust. And the higher the trust level, the higher the speed in which happens. And so you've seen deals get done with certain countries. It's on a handshake, right? Because the trust level is high. And other ones, we say there's a deal, but the deal never happens because of low trust. So for those who are listening, whether it's relationship with your kids or whether it's with your spouse or whether it's a volunteering or whether it's in a corporate setting, trust foundation is something I encourage you to explore. And just keep in mind, it's not whether you trust a person or not. Trust varies from task to task. So my trust with you as a podcaster could be different than my trust level with you as a financial advisor, and my trust level with you as a doctor. And in a relationship, a trust level is a husband versus a father, and a provider versus a nurturer versus a friend. And as a worker, my trust level with you in front of a client versus behind the scenes could be completely different. And so from a societal standpoint, I think that's where we're deficient, as we have it. And, we look at our political system, there's little to no trust there. So that was a mouthful. And it's interesting, if you don't mind me saying, I think in business, there's a vocabulary change now, because trust, there's a gentleman, Stephen Covey, who wrote a book, Speed of Trust. It's probably about 15, 16 years ago. In fact, I was so taken with it on an airplane ride, I called up, was able to get a hold of their organization and got certified. And I went out, they said it's in Utah. And I'm thinking, it's going to be a bunch of tree huggers out there. American Airlines was out there, Disney was out there, the US government. I mean, they knew what this currency, what the weight it carried. And so that's 16 years ago. But if you look at now, the number one leader is empathy. So now we've introduced trust. Now we've introduced empathy in the workplace. And then Marcus Buckingham just wrote a book, Love in the Workplace. So now in business, we have love, trust, empathy. 10 years ago, no, we saved that for outside. And that just kind of gets back to what we talk about, is I think that in business and in anything that you're doing, it could be in your faith, you have to inject the humanity. And there's been this effort, it feels like, to have my work life, my personal life, and work-life balance. And you're extracting humanity. The opportunity is, how do you inject humanity into the experience where there is trust and there is respect and people can live their values and you're not violating them. And so for someone tuning in, they may think, that's, so altruistic and so esoterical, but it's the reality of hardcore business, that if you're attrition and attraction, you want to keep the people you have and you want to gain new ones, all the science is validating it. They got to feel significant, self-worth, sense of belonging. It all goes back to trust, empathy, finding love in what they do. Sorry, you got me preaching. Sorry, I know it is Sunday morning, but can I pass around the collection plate? How's that work? Is there an electronic collection plate I can pass around?
Heck yeah, baby. That's right indeed. Ain't nothing wrong with passing the plate indeed. Better than passing a flood. Because my goodness, man's on fire, baby. That's right indeed. On fire indeed. You're so right though. And I never even thought about that, even heard or considered the fact. It's like, oh yeah, that trust currency that we all carry, it actually varies too with like what we do. It's like, oh yeah, me as a podcast. So it's like, yeah, trust me all you want if you as an expert, like, hey, I've been doing this for a little bit. Some would say
Yeah.
dinosaur years in podcasting terms, but it's like, oh yeah, like financial advisor, like go to somebody else for that one, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm not a millionaire yet. Go to somebody else for that. But it's like trust factors vary, and it's kind of like why folks should focus on staying on their strength zone indeed, so that way they can keep their trust factor high in those different areas and skill sets. That's powerful, dude. Like that's freaking great, man.
Well, I look at what you do, and I had a chance. I probably shouldn't have looked at your guest list because it's a pretty impressive roster. And, I thought, like, how does somebody get that caliber of individual, right? Because I think there's some people that, by any standards, have had a great amount of success or education experience. And in what you do, there's, well, there's more than one podcaster. Let's put it that way, right? And then, but people have to trust you, and they have to trust your messaging and your intent and your integrity and your capabilities and your results and your capacity. And so, yeah, and when you look at things like that and people look at that, that's things that can add to trust, right? Because there's a capability that you can have a podcast. The results are you get someone of that caliber. So now all of a sudden, someone who's never met you goes, yeah, I'll be on your podcast. Someone else may not have that list of people. And listen, it may be a different intent, but whoever is going on there, however they define trust. And that's the other thing. And you alluded to this earlier, Dom, is that people define trust a little bit different. They don't define it differently, they measure it differently. And so some of us have come, and I don't want to speak for you, but for myself, if you came from a lower economic situation, there's some things that are very common to that. And there is a lack of trust. So, if you don't trust that the parental unit is going to be there the entire period you grow up, right? If you don't trust the people who've been put in society to protect and to serve you, it drives a different behavior, right? If you don't believe that the people who've been put in your life, whether it's a teacher or a parent, to look out for your best interest do, you could be a distrusting person. Now, somebody else could grow up and they go, no, my parents have been married for 35 years. We had the best police department in the world, right? The education was top in the country. I trust our education system. I trust who's been put in place to protect us. I trust the parenting concept, right? So I share it with you because some people trust is yours to lose. They go, yeah, until you do something, then trust me. I trust you completely. And other people are like, no, 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 no. It's a show me state, right? You got to earn that trust. I give the example. I was speaking in the Midwest. I never met this person, and we were talking. He said, yeah, I want you to come out and talk with our team, our group, and everything. And they said, there's a really nice hotel, but they said, I'd love for you to stay at my house. Like, I live outside Philadelphia. I was like, you have an 18-month-old child. You've never met me. You're going to let a complete stranger? They go, yeah, it's just the way we operate. They're Mass in Wisconsin. They go, we leave our doors open. We mow our neighbor's lawn if they're sick, right? Probably a month later, I was doing something in New York, and the person told me, yeah, I got this nice hotel. It's less than a mile from my house. Like, you're not going to stay at my house, but this hotel is beautiful. And right. But there's different levels of trust. So I think it's imperative in relationships, whether it's work or personal, is that you understand how people offer trust and how they measure trust as well.
Yeah, that's right indeed. That's right indeed. And funny enough, it's all just started because it was just a teaser for one chapter. One of his freaking books is gonna be having the proceeds go to charity, so you know it's gonna be extra good, full of extra love. That's right. That's right indeed. It's mama's cooking. It's good stuff.
I appreciate that. Well, your mom's cooking, not mine, dude. Yeah, let's qualify that. Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. Yeah, there's my promise for anyone who knows me and knows her cooking. Yeah, it's not hers. It'll be Dom's mom's cooking. Yeah.
That's funny. Well, we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive, and that is if you know, wake up tomorrow, you're 25 again, but you're still in 2023. What advice would you give to yourself?
Dom, I just had this conversation with a friend yesterday. I now know what it means. If I only knew then what I knew now, right? It's so interesting to ask. So the question is what would I do differently? I would, I think I have a different definition of happiness now. So I think I would pursue different things. I would take more risk in life, like as far as my job, and just to be specific with people, up until mid 30s, I had the 9 to 5 that everyone else has, right? And I was making what I was making. It wasn't the most, it probably wasn't the least, but just kind of was what it was. But I had this limited thinking, and 25-year-old would realize that the only limits are the limits that I put on myself. And I was so intent at 25 and trying to not repeat the past that I sought out security and everything. And I didn't want to take risks. I wanted to do everything right. And as I've gotten older, I just learned that like failure's not really a thing to me. Like things don't work out and have the desired outcome, but it's not failure. So at 25, I would have taken more risk with my career. I would have, I think, invested more in myself emotionally and intellectually, and less in my ego and my pride. And and by the way, for anyone who's listening, you know what I mean. It's not like you're narcissist. It's just that, well, what will people think of me? Like, and what do these clothes project? And what does this car project? And as I've gotten older, it doesn't matter to me as much as what people think. And the 25-year-old me, that what matters. It focused more on what is the right thing to do. And so I wouldn't ignore, my social awareness about how I impact others. I would just be much more self-aware and include the social awareness. I just think I was more socially aware of how people perceived me and my image, and less self-aware. And now I think I'm more self-aware about where I'm at and how authentic, because I think my authenticity is my competitive advantage. It's not being like everybody else. I wish at 25, I see some young kids. I bet you have too. And by the way, when I say young kid, anybody who's under 30s who, are you kidding? If you're under 60, a young kid, right? That they've embraced who they are. And by the way, when I say this, it's not with a total disregard for humanity and society. I'm just saying they've embraced maybe their altruism, their creativity, their communication style, right? And that's what I would give myself. So it's not. I wish I had a sentence for you, but I guess I'd be more self-aware, not in a narcissistic way, and less socially aware.
Ah, that's right indeed. It's powerful. That's right. Then again, when you think of narcissists, are they really self-aware? When you think about
Dude,
it.
that is, you and I could chat for forever, because that's what the work I do now starts off with this conversation. So quite frequently, what I get is somebody who's highly skilled. So as an example, there's this global engineering company that I do work for. They build out the pharmaceutical facilities for like J&J, some of those companies. And by the way, when I say I'm global, it's not in a boastful way. Humanity is scalable. Whatever you're experiencing, and you're as a sole proprietor or a small business, so is everybody else in large business. So HR called up, they go, this is a high potential, high productivity, high performing individual. We don't want to lose them. Their technical skills, it's their interpersonal skills that they're struggling with. And they said, we're not sure what the solution is, but you've done some work with us in the past, and you had someone else that you were able to just help us yield to shift that person's thinking. And so I said, I don't know where to start. Would you be open to that? And they said, well, how self-aware is the person? They go, Jay, they know that when the stress hits, they flip. And now it becomes counterproductive to what we try to do in the way of collaboration and communication. And they said they're very self-aware. I said, where are they with self-regulate now that they know where they are to make that adjustment? They go, Jay, that's it. That's it. That's where we need help is self-regulation. And so where I focus is self-awareness, me to understand where you're at. And when you talk about narcissists, they are somewhat self-aware. The self-regulation's not there. The social awareness generally is what's missing because of an extreme case of a narcissist. It's not that they don't consider your perspective. They don't even think there is another perspective other than their own.
Yeah.
It's truly almost like an illness. So they're missing the social awareness of what I want to be careful. So I won't mention a name, but I think there's several political people this could apply to, and you pick the person that when they say things, it's what you say, it's how you say it, and it's when you say it. And they're not aware of how they are saying things, or they may not be aware of when they are saying things, or they don't seem to be aware of what they are saying. So the narcissist is somewhat self-aware, not completely, but there is an awareness of what they think and what they feel because they're doing things to feed their own significant self-worth, sense of belonging. Self-regulation is not there. Social awareness is definitely not there. And then the relationship management. And so, by the way, that's all part of emotional intelligence, those four pieces. And I think that's, listen to and listen to this part if you listen to nothing else. AI is threatening that. It's looking to replace what we as human beings can't capture in emotional intelligence. Artificial intelligence is capturing. And so you're seeing it in call centers. I read 2 days ago that they're going to try the first court case with artificial intelligence. So there's going to be an earpiece. The person's going to defend themselves against the lawyer and the other person, and nobody will know. The judge, the court, no one will know. But artificial intelligence has this capability, right, to do what we as human beings haven't been able to evolve and do. And so for some of you who call into these call centers now and they try to solve, whether it's your banking, say like a Wells Fargo or Amazon, they try to solve it. When they can't, it moves on to a person. When the person gets it, AI has said, hey, they're a little bit frustrated. Here's their issue. Here's the way that you may want to respond. For anybody who's listening who's an executive coach, first of all, pull off to the side of the road when I tell you this. Yes, because you're going to have to find a new profession. There's a coaching company that's come up with AI for coaches. So if you were coaching me, Dom, you would have the software that's listening to the call and would be feeding you what the tone of my voice, how I'm feeling, and here's the next question that you want to ask. So how do you combat that and create value? I believe in raising your emotional intelligence and helping other people to raise their emotional intelligence. When you think back, you said, Jay, what's the one question you wish people would ask? How do I raise my emotional intelligence? And how do I raise the emotional intelligence of people in the organization? Their self-awareness, their self-regulation, their social awareness, and their relationship management. Dom, how many problems would that solve?
A lot of problems.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot of problems.
Yeah. So whether it's your marriage, your kids, your nonprofit, your church, work, government, race relations. Could you imagine in like a race relation situation? By the way, anybody, I don't get to see or hear the listeners. So if your situation, my comment doesn't reflect your situation, I just want to be sensitive to that and where you are. So please don't take this as a flippant or a light-hearted, here, just take this pill type of thing. I believe when you talk about race, and I want to take one of the most emotionally charged conversations, and it started off with the other group saying, what is your perception of the situation? What is your perception of how our group, our company has handled this? And whether it's race relations or diversity or equality or, what we're doing based on men, women, social identity. What if the conversation started off that way? What is what's your opinion? What do you think my opinion is? What could I do differently that would yield a different response from you? Right? This is all emotional intelligence. I go, okay, emotionally charged situation, because emotional intelligence, and not to insult anyone who's listening, I think you have a highly educated audience, but just so there were a common definition, and there's a lot of them. Emotional intelligence is simply the ability to identify and understand an emotion in yourself and to others, and then adjust your behavior accordingly. What if people who are navigating life situations, I can identify my emotion. I'm emotionally charged. You're emotionally charged. And then adjust my behavior. I'm not going to defend and explain. I'm going to acknowledge, don't have to validate. I'm going to ask a question to get more information and data. I know it seems overly simplified. It's just our approach right now. When you get up on stage and you start sharing your opinion and your thinking and your perspective, you're off to a flying stop. Time to pass that collection plate again. I gotta stop, Tom. Sorry. Yeah.
We got the we got the PJ in the building, baby. Pastor J in the building, baby. Giving us that
Yeah.
good word indeed. Hey, but it's all good. Funny she mentioned the AI coach. Funny enough, I'm not sure if there's more than one AI coaching company, but the we had a couple episodes ago, we did have the CEO of a company that is the AI coach.
Really? Brilliant. It's brilliant. And I think if you talked with this person, this is the reality, is, are we replaceable? Am I replaceable? This is really a conversation you have to have with yourself and with your people and with your leaders, because I think that AI coach, well, timing's very interesting, but he realized something too, is that, part of the work that I do is not only will I do this work with you, I can show your leaders how to use a science-based neuroscience to coach your people. And by the way, for anyone who's on there, there's dozens of coaching programs and they all work. So anything I share with you, it's not to dilute what they do and just saying it's different. This is neuroscience based. Is he probably realized two things, is that one, I don't know this human dynamic, if I can control it or if people are teachable. And I don't know if it's a willingness or an ability thing. So AI, right? It just makes it easier. So I don't know if I can teach them, and it makes it easier. And I think, that's why with this versus that, I just want to make leadership easier. I got to begin to check these boxes. Can I make it easier? And AI is going to have a lot of benefits. It is. It will. For you who's listening, will AI replace what you do? That is where you need to spend some time. And, I think for you and for myself, is what do we do so that we can't be replaced by AI? That's, do you mind sharing that guest's name? Or would that be
And
appropriate to do?
Nancy Parsons, yeah, she actually, the way she and her company actually uses AI, it's for companies with 10,000 people because there's only like one or two or few of her. Then trying to coach 10,000 people, like yeah, that's why the
Mass
AI is used.
customization, mass customization. I love it. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, it's smart. Here's and this is not a reflection of her. I'm just saying is that I think because here's the other thing that's going on too, and we're kind of jumping around a little bit. With inflation, we need to raise our prices, all of us in the business that they're doing it with everything else, and not
Yeah.
that we're a commodity, but it's about raising. And Jim Rome, going way back in the day, now you're going OG, right? With those people. But he said it's about raising your value. If you're raising your prices, are you raising your value? And so, with AI, one of the things I'm going to have to combat with her, because it's brilliant what she did, is how do I raise my value with my clients so that at some level it either justifies or supersedes, what this AI is doing. So um, yeah, I'm impressed by her and I applaud her, and it just raises the game for me. And I think that's what we all need to think of about when we're in there. Are we raising the game? Are we raising the value? Because you can't raise your prices without raising your value. You can. It's just going to be really hard for people to digest, right? However, if you raise the value to the point that the price becomes secondary to the experience, Disney's, and I'm oversimplifying, it's low hanging fruit. Those guys continue to raise the price, but you know what? People continue to go, and they go multiple times because the experience, the price becomes secondary to the experience.
Heck yeah. That's right,
Yeah.
indeed. Once they get you in the park, it's over. It's like,
Yeah. But what if we could do that as people? What if you're a pastor? What if you're a leader that people just, you know what, if you sell a product or a service, they go, yes, it's a lot of money, but I'm going to save somewhere else. It's funny in the beauty industry, you see this a lot, right? People go to their hairdresser or their barber and it's disproportionate, but they'll cut back somewhere else because there's something about that experience in society of that human touch and the conversation, the engagement. And, in a space like that, we're getting less. I think there's 6 places in society where it's legal to touch someone. Legal, let me qualify that. And so there's a connection there, but those people have an advantage, right? Because you can touch people and dopamine's released. So we jump around a little bit, but I think for anybody listening, how do I elevate my influence and raise the value of my influence with people? And I think it's increasing trust in the relationship as well. AI, they're going to have success because you're going to build trust with people. Something's going to go wrong with AI.
Oh
I
yeah, definitely.
I believe that will ruin the trust. So it may have a spike and then it'll drop back. And so, we've seen movies, right, where AI all of a sudden takes over. So I'm probably not saying anything anyone hasn't heard of. What's important is that you don't do that as a human being. And if you do break trust with your client or these significant relationships in your life, if it's a currency like money, like in your bank, that when you go to withdraw money, you have something in there. If you have to withdraw in that trust bank, you've got money in there. The challenge is if you overdraw on your bank account, if anyone's ever done that, right? You can do that with trust too. You just don't have enough there. It's when people leave you in a business relationship. Do we solve the
Biggest
world's problems today, Don? Do we come close? It's
probably
easy.
got
Two guys
probably
sitting.
I'm not sure about that, but we got a lot closer to it because my goodness, man. Well, this is the interview you have to play 3 times over, man. My goodness, man. Like, how can you elevate your influence? Like, dude, that's a powerful question to add to your repertoire.
Mm.
Indeed. And there's so many gems to excavate from this conversation. Indeed. And the fun part about it is that's only probably 0.5 of what Jay has to offer. So for those who need to dive in, hire and bring him onto the organization, maybe hire him as an executive coach and dive into the other 95.5%, what's the best way for folks to do so?
Best way to connect is I don't have anything to sell anybody per se, but what I would say, if you want to have a conversation, is that you can go to Jay Williams Co. So it's JayWilliamsco.com. And you can go to Jay Williams Co. on LinkedIn. You can do the same thing on Instagram. And so I want you to reach out. There's a contact, there's Calendarly there, and you can, block out a few minutes to chat. One of the things I've done on my website is I've created a Q&A. It's one of the tabs. And if you go there, it's the most commonly asked questions, or it's not even common. It's questions that I will get that I'll respond in video. And so one of the recent ones, just to give you an example of the diversity, is a female executive reached out. She said, I'm sitting with the executive team, and I'm not getting the level of respect that I think that my title and what I've earned, and I'd love to get your thoughts on how I navigate that. And so, and my goal is to answer within 60 to 90 seconds to give a response. It may not be the response, but a response that stimulates the conversation and maybe shifts the thinking. So if you have that, we don't even have to interact. You can email in the question. My commitment is I'll respond in video. to you. So again, Jay Williams Co, JayWilliamsco.com.
Woohoo! That's right, indeed. So we're going to put a link to his wonderful website in the show notes. Folks, take advantage of that Q&A. See what questions my man is answering. See if it applies to your situation. Heck, maybe even shoot him one of those Q's and he'll give you an A. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. And you'll get to feel the power, indeed. You'll get that next level. That's right. You might even have a way to elevate your influence, indeed. So that's right, folks. So you'll have your mountaintop experience, even with the snow on top. You have your mountain top experience, indeed. So my goodness, any parting words before we close up shop, my man?
I'm just, I'm taking notes. You have the gift of piecing together words. So I'm just sorry, there's a little pause there. I'm just taking notes of things I'm gonna to borrow. It's funny with speakers, and you may be able to relate to it. The first time we hear something, we give that person credit. The second time we go, I'm not sure what I did. And the third time we own it. So if you hear this again, I will pay you. It just means I said more than 3 times. Here's and forgive me if this feels like I'm getting on a pedestal. I just want people to think about this as we go. If there's one part of society I think everybody can contribute to today, just in your own space, is I think we've redefined respect. And, Dom, I don't know how you grew up, but in our brief interaction, and I think it's similar for you, is that whether we agreed with someone, whether we respected them or not, we were still respectful. So whether I respected you, I was still respectful. And I think over the last 6 or 7 years, that word from a societal standpoint has taken on a new filter. And the filter is if I respect you, if you're respectful to me, then I'll be respectful to you. And so what's come out of that is if I don't respect you and I don't respect your opinion on religion, on getting a vaccination, on identity choices, on going to public settings, I just won't be respectful to you. And I shared that with you because it goes back to what I shared that Amy Cuddy says that human beings, these 2 core things is, will you be respectful? So from a societal standpoint, that has to be integrated in our day-to-day interaction. And when we are not respectful to people, they disconnect emotionally from us. And so if you will just use this filter, is forget whether you respect someone in the sense that, or are they respectful? Forget it in the sense that don't let that determine how respectful you're going to be. And, my oldest son came to me, we were having this conversation. So he said, if a murderer came to your house, you'd be respectful. I said, well, under the context that they're visiting and they're not coming to murder me, would I offer that person a meal? Would I offer them something to drink? Yes, I'm still going to be respectful. If they have to leave, I'm still going to be respectful. If someone's an atheist, I'm still going to be respectful. If someone, makes choices from a political standpoint, I'm still going to be respectful. So that's where I just want to leave the listeners, is that where are you not being respectful? And what would it take for you to be respectful to that person, whether you respect them or their opinion or not? But if we just started off that way, man, it's a little bit, change a little, it could change a lot.
Thanks a bunch for investing your time by listening to this wonderful podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you really did, do me a solid and leave a review or share this episode with at least 3 people that you think would get some value out of today's content. Advance others to advance yourself.